Welcome to the Capital Integrative Health Podcast, a podcast dedicated to transforming the consciousness around what it means to be healthy and understanding the root causes of both disease and wellness. I am Dr. Andrew Wong, co-founder of Capital Integrative Health, an integrative practice committed to expanding access to holistic root cause medicine to the global community. Today we have our friend and colleague, Cory Jecmen. Cory is an acupuncturist and traditional Chinese medicine practitioner who has been with CIH for several years, helping her patients get to the root cause of conditions including anxiety, chronic pain, digestive concerns, and much more. His primary goal is leveraging the power of acupuncture to move patients towards long-term wellness and optimal health. Today we are going to dive into how acupuncture and breathwork can benefit your health. We want to let you know that for this episode, we were not able to use the original audio from the microphone, but because the conversation with Cory was so valuable, we wanted to share the audio that we captured from our camera. We hope you can still enjoy learning about how acupuncture and breathwork can be powerful tools on your health journey. Again, welcome, Cory, and thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to be here. This is going to be fantastic. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good to be here.
Yeah, so first I guess we could talk about your background and maybe how we know each other and how we kind of met, and then getting introduced to integrative health. How were you introduced to integrative health?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can start with that since it's happened such a long time ago, sort of chronologically here.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't doing too hot when I was younger in high school, just sort of feed myself with Taco Bell, and nothing wrong with that, but that's sort of that was my lifestyle, and having a lot of poor health and concerns, and was introduced to a Oriental medical doctor, Dr. Jake Freck, and was able to see him, fortunately, for a series of treatments that had changed my life, and sort of never looked back. It was sort of opened as this potential and this opportunity that right in the time when I was trying to figure out what to do, with my life, it was sort of, I have a lot of medicine in the family, orthopedic surgeons and dentists and that sort of thing, and allergists, and so it was a template, but it didn't quite fit me. I was really interested in jumping in and, helping people and making a difference, and that was a vehicle that I sort of chose to do that through. So, it was sort of functional medicine before it was it was around as much as it is today, and it was there's leaky gut and candida and all these sorts of treatments for these types of things, and it changed my life. And so went through school looking to go pre-med, and then just sort of couldn't convince myself that was the route that was best for me. I sat down after the MCAT and all these things and said, write a personal essay, and it was sort of, I couldn't convince myself, so I couldn't even begin to write one. So this is what looked the most promising, and I set sail on it, and it's been a fantastic journey. I think it's hard for us to know what we're going to end up in life actually doing from day to day, and if it's really going to be a great fit until we go, decade deep in it and figure that out. So I've been very fortunate to sort of be aligned and a match with what I do. Really love
so
taking care of people.
It sounds like your personal experience with Dr. Jake and maybe doing some acupuncture and TCM type treatments really changed the narrative on what you wanted to do with your career.
Yeah,
that's great.
Supremely effective, and it was it worked great for me, and it was it was a great engagement with the patient, and it was really getting to know people, and it was sort of it fit well. It had time and space to do it in, under it wasn't under constraints of other types of medicine.
So you went to acupuncture school eventually at the formerly known as Thai Sophia,
absolutely,
now called MUIH. Can you tell us about that experience with an acupuncture? How did you get introduced to, some of the deeper aspects of acupuncture that you practice now?
Yeah, just, I felt like the universe sort of had my back on that one, just like put me in the right place at the right time. It was, I couldn't do that again if I tried to make that work, looking at schools and where do you pick one out of a hat to do a tour, I mean, the place was such a good fit, just the philosophy and the people and the whole vibe of the place. It gelled. It was a huge place of personal transformation and growth, and I think that's what they really foster well, is just, you've got to live it, you've got to learn it, and you got to sort of be it to become it, and so it was really pivotal in that way for me. So and then throughout my resume after school, did a bit in at private practice, and I did a bit at the VA Medical Center, downtown DC, you know, and it was in with a research organization there, and then went out to Casey Health, where I met you, and that was a fantastic sort of eye-opening experience to be sort of introduced to you and your mindset around medicine. I hadn't been exposed to anybody in the service, you know, had your same sort of outlook on things. So that was transformational, and I knew when I found you it was a good match. So so we had a bit of a time there, and then, you know, followed you on over here and just been absolutely amazed at what you're creating, and you know, the whole team, you know, that I've never been in with some organization that everything's resonating on the same sort of plane with, you know, all the staff, everybody that I feel, you know, loves to be here.
It's been an amazing journey, absolutely. Mm-hmm. The people here are great, you know, heart-centered. And speaking back to MUIH, you know, a lot of us have some training or some, you know, these philosophical similarities with MUIH.
Yeah.
Maryland and University of Integrative Health. So yourself, Liz, a lot of the nutrition team as well.
Absolutely.
What do you like most about being an acupuncturist? Let's start with that. Yeah,
I get to talk to the most amazing people that do the most amazing different things that I'd never be exposed to in my life. That's one sort of small little tangent, but really get to dive into someone's life, and I have the time to explore and see how it really ticks. And, you know, I don't feel sort of constrained to go explore and really investigate, you know, and I think that's the key to sort of health and wellness is, you know, you can be a decent fit for a lot of things, but how do you know you're the right fit and you got the right tool and what that tool actually is? And so this is getting to know people and then watching transformations. I mean, you know, selfishly, it's one of the most rewarding careers I think I could ever stumble into, you know, and it's just to watch and be a part of somebody's growth and transformation and their healing journey, you know, whatever that starts at and wherever it sort of becomes, it's just fascinating to watch and to be a part of. So.
I feel like that's why a lot of us go into healthcare, is to connect with people and to not only help people, but also connect with them, because we're so interested in people and their mindset, their lives, their hobbies, their passions, all of that.
And, it's amazing the different lives people live, and sort of getting a window into that.
And I think, besides that, clinically, we know that patients are our best teachers. You know, we can do all the studying and all the conferences and read all the books we want, but when we connect with people, that's when the real magic, the real learning happens as well.
Absolutely. My only other thing that's sort of that hits on a similar level is parenting. You know, to be the thing that you know, somebody else is going to emulate. You know, calls me to a higher standard the same way that acupuncture practice does. It, you know, it really and I've sort of welcomed it and invited it in, but just, you know, to put my life on display and sort of be, you know, step up to be that role model and sort of, you know, live the lifestyles that I speak of and the behaviors that I encourage people to do as, you know, through example. And so, you know, it's really that accountability that's brought into my life where, you know, I've got to put it all out on display, and none of it's, you know, I don't intend on hiding any of it. So it's, you know, but it's got to be kind of, you know, what did I eat?
It's about being, not doing. It's about living that life and embodying that health. And I feel like with acupuncture too, as my training with medical acupuncture, and I was sharing this with Liz on the first podcast, is I feel that healing involves, you know, this relationship between the practitioner and the patient, but some of those, you know, I guess boundaries might be somewhat a little blurred there, because we know that with healing in a traditional model, you have a provider that provides some XYZ amount of care to a patient in a very, almost like a passive way. You know, like you think about like passive administration of antibodies or something, or, you know, administration of medications or supplements, which I think could be really helpful for a lot of people.
Right.
From a healing perspective, I always felt that when I do acupuncture treatment, I'm also getting healed by the universe in a way. So it's like a bidirectional energy exchange as opposed to a person doing a treatment on another person.
Yeah, it's a connection, you know, it's sort of, you know, you've, you're in that moment, you're on the same journey, you know, you're walking right beside them and it's on the same thing, and you get to sort of, in some strange way experience that growth and transformation also, you know.
In that same boat together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And so we talked about a little bit about, you know, acupuncture and how that's been so transformational for you. Let's get into some of the details of acupuncture, because I don't think a lot of people would necessarily know. They might have had a couple treatments, they might have known someone that got acupuncture, but let's start from real basic first. What is acupuncture? How can acupuncture help people's health?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very vague understanding out there, right? It's a friend had it or somebody. Most people know somebody that's had it. But
most people know that acupuncture involves needles, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
And even that understanding is very poorly understood.
Absolutely.
It's sort of, the best that I can sort of assume is that the people relate it to their other needle experiences of hypodermics. It's just not the same thing,
Mm-hmm. Like getting a blood draw.
Yeah. It's couldn't be any more different in my experience. But
I totally agree.
But that's what we start with for most people. So it's a bit of understanding and a learning that has to happen, and what it is and what it isn't, and then and it's hard to wrap your head around. You can put a little piece of a little very tiny sliver of stainless steel in the very precise thing, and some electrochemical reaction happens, and your life changes. How do you break that down into something that's understandable? And how do you even invent that thing? It's very poorly understood. But what we do is generations and generations of the shoulders that I'm standing on of experience and lifetimes of learning and practice. So we know when to do what and why to do it and what to expect and anticipate as an outcome. So it's very understood in the practice of, but scientifically, the mechanism and that sort of hasn't been discovered yet, is the way I like to put it. I just think we're continually learning, and we just sort of don't understand the complexity of what really exists. So
yes.
So that's kind of...
My understanding of acupuncture is that because there's different meridians in the TCM system,
mm-hmm.
where there's energy channels, acupuncture tries to unblock those channels or meridians. That's part of acupuncture?
Yeah, I'll probably break it down a little bit and sort of go into it, right? Because I think there is sort of a learning curve for most people out there. I imagine some listening to this as well. But we've got a system of channels. Sort of back up a little bit here. We have 12 primary acupuncture channels, and they circulate this very poorly understood chi sort of energy, right? And it's a life spark. It helps things do their function. There's a lot of ways to describe it, and it's hard to measure. So we have this kind of a circulatory system, so to speak, of this energy that circulates around our body. And as my analogy that I got from a colleague is sort of garden hoses. We have these 12 garden hoses that are connected, sort of screwed end to end, and we've got 12 defined sections of them, and it's a closed loop, and it circulates it around, right? But we want continuity in the system, and so as I'm addressing a patient, I'm looking for a few different things in that system. I want to make sure that, as the sort of energy flows around the system, is there any major blockages in the system? Is there a dam in the river? Is there a kink in the hose? Is the coupling's not screwed together? Is there some underlying blockage that's going to prevent the progression? And if that exists, then we need to resolve it first before we sort of set the foundation up before we go on. And then we start to work at equality. Is everybody getting a fair share of what the energy that's being circulated? Does everybody have enough to do what they need to do? And so then we start to work on balancing out the system, make sure the distribution is good, and then we start to work in, and it doesn't have to necessarily be in this order, but the quality of how the energy feels. It's a very sort of particular sort of optimal quality that we're looking for, and as we see sort of different conditions arise, the quality changes a bit. I'm going into that a bit, but each one of these sort of 12 channels, the way that I think, I'm not trying to dumb down anything, it's hard to explain in ways, and so I use a bit of analogies with it, but if we were going to divide our whole human existence in 12 equal pieces of a pie, right? All our physiological function, all our mental, emotional processes, all our spiritual aspects of ourselves, and we were to sort of put that all in a 12 equal containers. Each channel is responsible for that group of functions. And so when we're doing an intake with someone, in the conversation, we're identifying who's responsible for this and sort of who's not picking up their fair share kind of thing. So. So that's kind of how the channel system works, and the different things it can affect.
And acupuncture also relies heavily on pulse reading.
Mm.
So can you explain to everyone what pulse reading is and why that's so important?
Yeah, we need a sort of a look in, an accurate look into the body to tell us what's happening, and currently. And so, before labs and before imaging and all these other ways to sort of take
maybe a window into the garden hose.
Yeah, right. We got to take a look. Exactly. It is exactly it. So we have to, do some sort of assessment that can tell us what's going on, and we use the pulse quite heavily. And so I explain it a lot to patients. So if, anyone that's been in treatment with me has probably heard this sort of explanation before. But it's we take a pulse. on the radial artery, and it looks like a regular pulse, but it's not related. There's some concern with the heart rate, but it's not the heart rate that we're looking at. We're looking at the fluid, the quality of the fluid in an elastic tube. And so the way to sort of, understand that is we can't feel the chi. There is no substance, right? So we have to measure it somehow. So we feel the blood, and we sort of, the blood follows chi, and so the blood is this kind of artifact or hologram of the chi. And so by feeling the quality of the blood, we can make an interpretation of how the chi is doing. And so in these very particular spots, we're looking for what the quality and what the volume, all the different sort of characteristics of what that feels like. And so kind of go around the loop of those 12 little garden hoses and sort of check in and who's got what and how does it feel and each one of these sorts of things. And so, my analogy that I use oftentimes, because it's kind of a magnified view, is water balloons. It's another elastic, thing with fluid inside. And even, with no practice, your eyes closed, I could set out a couple water balloons here on the table, and you could tell me very easily, this one's got a little air before I get to some water, and so it's not quite full. And then this one is so overly full, chock full, you couldn't fit anymore, and the whole outside's all tense and rigid. Or this one has some, the viscosity is different in this one. It's got some sort of, jelly in it.
I think that's a crucial difference as well between a Western pulse, which is taking it and, one spot on the radial artery, and it's really just with, a couple fingers, versus the acupuncture, more of a superficial, middle, and deep pulses, and there's three different
positions, 2 layers, both sides. Yeah.
Right, on both sides, right? So that's like 18 pulses, essentially.
Yeah, or 12 different to, 12 related to the 12 channels, absolutely. Yeah. And so it's, it's a lot of nuance, and it takes forever to learn. It's, still trying to get better at it. But it really helps me sort of set up the treatment. I need to define what's happening. Our conversation helps, and all these other sort of assessment techniques help. And I need to sort of have, what's happening internally. And then it helps me sort of design the treatment. And so we'll set up, what we're going to do for the day, and then put those in. And then I use it as the only way to get better in life, I think, is just massive amounts of feedback, in the system. So I think it's, it's checking to see, is my treatment landing? How's the body responding to what I've decided to do? And is that actually moving the way that we've intended to do it? And so I check in with the pulse a lot. If you're going to come in with treatment with me, you can sort of put your wrist up and, be really good at that, doing it multiple times in a treatment. And then, when we finish, sort of take a snapshot of where we left off with, and we see if that returns, if it stays, sticks around, all that sort of stuff. It really gives me a lot of information.
I have a few follow-up questions to that, Cory. One is, what conditions do you find acupuncture most helpful for in your experience as a clinician?
Yeah, all sorts of things. The breadth of what it influences is huge, and it's sort of, I'm amazed at what people walk in and ask me to do sometimes, and that's fun part of it too, I think it's better at some things than others, but it can sure do a lot. Can't do everything. There's not much M.ac out there, and it works great in combination with other things. I think there's, a lot of different modalities in healthcare, kind of a Venn diagram. You've got kind of a bleed over into the other modalities a bit, and there can be some cross influence, but hitting it sort of spot on in the center of your circle is pretty important, Obviously, there's been plenty of research on aches and pains. We've sort of proven that over the years. Not to say that every single pain responds well, but that's a pretty generally easy thing to sort of accomplish. I end up treating a lot of anxiety and emotional sort of disturbance that gets a little too sticky. And then sleep. I think working here is sort of one of the beautiful things is the sort of level of education and the knowledge that people have here, and especially working with you over the years. I mean, you're one of the best people that understands acupuncture the most and what to sort of expect it to do for someone. And the referrals I get here are just spot on. It's a nice when that's all matched and somebody's expectations of what they're going to come in and get, and they achieve that.
That's great. They give great feedback back to me, back to the team. Yeah. So thank you. Yeah.
Fun.
And so sleep, anxiety, emotional issues, aches and pains, of course. What about digestive issues? Have you had any people that come in for more like irritable bowel or some digestive issues?
Yeah, I think it can be very helpful in that arena. I'm totally transparent, I'm really happy to work on a team with nutritionists because it's so hard to sort of like the education that has to go into teaching people and the sort of, the behavior change and the influences, right? It's tough to be the only one-stop shop on all those things. And so it's great to work with a team that can help educate and work with things, if it's biochemical and there's, or if it's food, or if there's different things going on that are besides energetic. Sometimes it's hard to do it alone, but I can have a great influence on it. Got somebody's constipation moving along the other day. It was great outcome. Different abdominal pains. It's really tough to assess different sort of signals and signs when they're coming from inside.
And we are very lucky and blessed to have great nutritionists here. And I think it takes a village. That's what I always say.
Absolutely.
Luckily here we have a village that talks to each other and communicates and coordinates. Right. You can have a village that they're all just like in their huts and maybe on the Wi-Fi, the whole time or something. But.
Which is what it typically ends up being,
right?
And in all the places that I've worked at, right? The effort, the intention is there, but the action is really tough to keep up with.
Right.
That integration of the providers, I think.
So I think you were saying before the podcast started rolling that you're looking at kind of this optimal view of medical and healthcare and wellness care as kind of like spokes in a wheel. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about spokes in a wheel? And that was a great...
just sort of dreaming this up last night, thinking about coming here and talking about it. But it was... people can seek out acupuncture primary. I mean, we can do a lot of different things. I don't think it's in our society and with our system. I don't think it serves that role. I think what you do and what the primary care team does is sort of the hub. You have to sort of differentiate which constellations of treatment are going to be the most accurate fit for what somebody has, and that's utmost important. And I think that's what you guys do a great job. And then I'm a spoke out on the wheel here, and I can be a really good fit, but we have to sort of, it's best to know that that's going to fit really well. And then I think where I sort of expanded that idea was that it's also very important to have a wheel that surrounds this hub and that spoke, because to sort of contain it all. Because I think what ends up happening in our sort of modern system is you've got a hub that might sort of throw you out on a vector, on a trajectory out into one of the spokes, but there's no sort of rally back in and sort of containment to keep it all sort of together.
A one-way ticket.
Yeah, it's a one-way ticket, right? Slingshot to Pluto and beyond, but whereas it's the onus is on the patient to sort of, to collect and to return back and to sort of keep up with that, right? But it takes a quarterback and kind of, somebody at the hub to sort of, choreograph all of that.
And we did talk at some of our podcasts already about how the patient is the CEO of their own health. However, there are times that, the patient, especially initially in their journey, if they're having some chronic illnesses or maybe have some time and energy issues, initially might need more of a support in the beginning. So that's where I think that wheel analogy really fits too.
Yeah, it's tough when you're going through it. People are in a tough jam sometimes, and it's tough to have the physical resources, the energy, the time, financially, and then if you're lacking in support around you to help sort of contain your wheel, it's tough.
I am going to do a little shout out here for acupuncture for the immune system, because it is about still COVID-19 pandemic here, 2021, and I have personally used acupuncture for myself when I've had colds and I was sitting at home putting some gallbladder 21 points and things in my own arm. I'm like, I gotta get over there and stretch over there. But it really made a difference, for me. And I know that acupuncture also can do things like, just to kind of throw in some research here, increase natural killer cells. It can decrease cortisol if that cortisol level is too high. Sometimes
Absolutely.
You don't want it to be that high. And obviously it can do things like balance the autonomic nervous system, improve the vagus nerve activity, things like that. It does so many things from a sort of this Western, physiologic level.
Absolutely.
That essentially translates to the patient as well. I feel great. My immune system's better. I'm not getting as many colds now, or whatever. So.
Yeah, and how do you measure that, right?
Right.
How do you really have a sensation of that, of a better immune system, right? It's hard for people to tell until you live it out and have some experiences and see how it sort of.
That's right.
How it fits. So, it's it's unique. Is it is it your sort of, is it the key for your lock? And I think that sort of it takes a bit of exploration as a patient to sort of find what that fit is, and unfortunately a little trial and error, but that's also
right.
a learning journey for you to sort of explore and and to see sort of how much of a fit. I think you'll know early on with any treatment, if it's the right sort of fit. But
in my practice, I really have felt that acupuncture is one of the best treatments for the immune system. So do you recommend that quite a bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, back to sort of you being a CEO of your own health, it's sort of, you got to take the onus on yourself. And sometimes you can sort of go very far with, if you're doing the work with diet, exercise, mindfulness, meditation, breathing, all the things, right? And if you're doing those, and sometimes you also need a helping hand to sort of just give you a little assist, and
That's
sort
right.
of give you the layup so you can, or give you the ball so you can make the layup. That's what
Well, you mentioned mindfulness and meditation, so that's a perfect segue into the next question, the next area of topics we want to talk about today, because you're such an expert in and very passionate about breath work. So I think let's talk about, first of all, how you view stress. What is stress? How you view stress, and then how do we transform our way of looking at stress by using the breath and other things?
Yeah, absolutely. I could probably go on all day on this. Talk about it.
We can talk about that on another podcast.
It's we can touch on it if we want to sort of dive deeper in another time. It's the universal with people and existence, and I work with people, and that's what we talk about. It's just I think there's a couple different ways to explain it. Maybe we'll go with sort of differentiate suffering and stress. I guess one of the ways I like to explain sort of things is, you've got, let's go with the stress. It's tough to be have a great view of your own stress. I just had somebody the other day. It was like, how would I know if I'm stressed? It's like
There's some blind spots.
It's after sort of all the explanations of what was going on in this person's life. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, how will I know it's there? And it's like, the awareness has to sort of be at some level to know what's actually happening internally. And how do you know that? I think, stress is such a vague term. Better use this as sort of engineering term as I've been taught. And it catches everything for us, but it's not just every sort of blanket catch-all thing. It's very detailed, and it's very specific things in people's lives. Is it your colleague that's annoys you every day? Is it your, is it a health concern? What is it? And define it a bit for yourself. And then, all stress isn't created equal with different weights, but then there's also sort of the relative stress is sort of stress over time, and it's like, the analogy that I like, that I've heard before is how much does that microphone that you're talking into weigh? Maybe like under a pound, let's say, right? It's not a very heavy thing, but if you take it off that stand and you hold it for a while, it's going to feel real light at first, and then you sort of holding it through the rest of the day, and you're going to sort of end up this evening, your arm's going to be pretty tired, and if you make it through the day or even in tomorrow, your arm's going to fall off, literally. And so, this load over time is also something that people don't really have a good understanding of, and it's and it erodes us, and it's tough to have something to balance out the other side of the teeter-totter and that leverage with our lifestyle and our behaviors and things to actually sort of, find a neutral zone when we sort of take things on.
I feel like life now is tilted a little bit more towards that erosion zone, kind of like these low level but yet chronic and unremitting stressors over time can really erode our health.
Right, because a lot of times you don't know that you have this light little microphone in your pocket until you've sort of like carried it forever,
That's
and
right.
I think we're very poor judges of weight over time, especially like, if we were to go on a backpack. I'm assuming you've sort of done some backpacking. When you pick that pack up in the morning, it's like you are not a judge of how heavy that pack's going to be, and it's and it changes over time. And I think it becomes very apparent to us when we set it down for a moment, and then pick for lunch or something, and then pick it back up. Which is an analogy for meditation, mindfulness. Set it down and take a break for a minute. And then it becomes clear when you pick it back up, actually what shape, what form, what density, all these sort of things are.
So if I hear you right and understand you right, you're saying that we can take that stress in the backpack and we're allowed to set it down.
You absolutely
to give it some rest. To give ourselves some rest.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think what the sort of big differentiation of different types of stress is ones that sort of are forced upon us and ones that we've sort of like voluntarily taken on. Those resonate different with us, and they activate different parts of our, of our psyche with, if we've voluntarily sort of gone into some or decided that we're going to take it on or going to do well with it, it activates different processes with our, challenge and reward and accomplishment and these sort of internal drives of ours to sort of make it better and to sort of, do better with our lives and to measure our lives with progress and these types of things. When we're saddled with something and we don't want it and we never, who does want it? We wouldn't choose these things for ourselves. And we get to choose, what our opinion is or what the meaning that we assign to it. Or if we want to sort of decide that we're going to take it on, and so, we get to choose those types of things, and that makes all the difference. If we've sort of perceived that we've been saddled with something, and then we continue to pick it up every day, something that society's doing.
Pretty heavy weight to bear.
Yeah. And I also think that people miss the opportunity to sort of be neutral with something, to sort of not have an opinion one way or another. I think that's a sort of, that's somebody else's, experience, life experience, their perspectives, their situation could have a completely different meaning in what is factual for them, you know what I mean? And to sort of let that be okay for them, but I think, I'd encourage, everything doesn't have to be in a positive or negative sort of, or a plus or a minus. We don't have to sort of discern that automatically, which I think is a lot of our nature to do. We could just be okay with it, or neutral, or just sort of not have an opinion, and that's okay too,
Right.
And that sometimes is just all that you need to set it down, or not even pick it up in the first place.
Got it. Shifting that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We could also trade that backpack for a Frisbee. That's another option.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let it kind of zoom out into outer space there.
Right. But I think, you can get good with your load, and you can make a harness for it and carry it around, and that's, that's great. And I think a lot of people are pointing at the arm, and that the arm's fatigued, and there's a problem with the arm, but you don't really realize you've been holding the mic out for, this whole podcast, Right. So it's just, it's a lot of perception, and there's a lot of range in there that we have our own ability to influence and to help ourselves with, right?
So there's stress and there's suffering, which in a way is assigning some sort of meaning to the stress. And
absolutely.
Almost like personalizing it to a degree that causes suffering at times.
Absolutely. You're right. You're spot on.
I guess let's talk about your experiences and take a deep dive now into breath work, because we know that the breath is one of the amazing and best ways to manage energy and to kind of address some of these issues that are inevitably rising in life with stress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of these different modalities, take your pick, right? It's whatever you're interested in doing and starting have an interest to go explore, right? Breathing, meditation, exercise, take your pick. There's a lot of stuff out there for you. But I think what all of those do is kind of like help you change the shape of it. It moves on you, and then you can define it better for yourself, right? If acupuncture sort of lessens this load a little bit, and then you can sort of see the forest through the trees, and you get to sort of like, you get to know it better, and oh my gosh, I can't believe I've been like doing this the whole time. You get a little perspective because of the range and the difference. And I think it's sort of another analogy I have that I teach patients on. It's pretty simple, and it's sort of on one hand, if you listen to this, I've sort of just got my hand sort of out here at sort of chest height, but I've got one hand, I've got the way it is, it's reality, right? I've got sort of, this is what it is, this table is white, this microphone stand exists with these letters on the microphone, this is reality. And then the other hand is what I want it to be. This is my expectation. This is, if it could be this, or it should be, or I'd rather it, all these sorts of things. And these two hands sort of just holding out here in front of me, this in between, the airspace in between is suffering. Right, and if however farther apart these get, the greater the suffering is sort of relative to it. So as much as I can sort of unify the way that things are and my expectation or my desire for it to be is exactly what it is.
So it should be like
if they're unified, if we have just one thing, it is fine exactly the way it is. Then it's hard to have any suffering inside of that.
Analogy.
Yeah. And so how do you do that? How do you like sort of marry these things together? Right? How do you sort of be okay at least, or be somewhat content with things that happen to you that aren't very good? And there's so much bad situations and things that people don't have any influence over. And so, I'm not trying to say this any sort of, off, but we've got to figure out a way, right, to combine these things and be okay with how it is, right? And it's back to sort of the neutral concept a bit, but it's also sort of, and so the way that I've found in my own practice is sort of, fall in love with it, find a way to fall in love with the reality of what is, right? And it's and so we're equipped with this big sort of electromagnetic sort of heart with love that has this sort of vibrational thing that attracts all the other hearts and sort of brings them together, and just use that technique on the thing that you are separate from, to attract it to yourself. And so it's sort of been my practice in some very sort of dire situations in life to sort of fall in love with what it is. And so I'll define it as just like a security camera kind of thing, and I'll just say, there's a blue trash can with a liner on it, just describe the situation. this is in, this person's in the hospital, and and this, and then this, and I love it for that, because I've decided to fall in love with the reality of the way that life is, and I'm going to find a way to find, and even if you start with this sort of micro little, well, the only thing I like in this room is this fake plant over here. You know what I mean? Start there and just let it sort of expand. You know what I mean? And so you got to find a way, and
create a little seed.
Create a little seed. Jam your foot in the door, and then maybe you can pry it open later. You know what I mean?
So gratitude, but also acknowledging just the reality of the situation as well.
Yeah.
It sounds like you can also, doesn't mean you can't have goals or want things to be a certain way, but we know that the only reality is really the present moment.
Yeah.
That's something we often forget, but we are also constantly reminded about that when we kind of drop back into grounded sort of breathing.
Right. Yeah, it's not a whole lot wrong right here if you're breathing and you're just sitting up and you're doing things, There's a lot to be thankful for, and I think it's a great sort of way to reorient yourself.
Right, we're upright, we're breathing, absolutely.
Yeah, there's something in there to be grateful for, I know it, you
yes.
can find it, right?
So what styles of breath work do you like the most? What's been helpful or most fun for you?
Yeah, I'd never think that I'd be sitting here talking about breath work. I literally, I had opportunities to be introduced to it many times, and there was a need I didn't see apparently. I had asthma as a child. I was, I had croup. I was, in an oxygen tent for the first couple of days of my life. I had some respiratory conditions that would have been ripe for finding this early on. So I even had an instructor in school that was telling me all the cool things that were happening, just sort of ignored it completely. But anyway, a couple of patients came in. I think it was a third one, was like, you got to try this. And it was just outside of my reference of like, it felt a little too extreme. I really like the basics, good nutrition, some good movement, and, these breath retention techniques, I didn't explore. I think we're really good at breathing, but we aren't good at all the different dynamic sort of things that intentional breathing can do for us, of breath retention and different sort of. And so what I explain to people is, every situation has a physiology that sort of, every situation has a physiology. If I'm talking in front of you, I've got a different heart rate, different things, and then the breathing sort of comes on board. So, this is what we're doing. I'll get a breath to match the situation, right? And what you're doing with the breathing exercise is just working that in reverse. We'll do the breath of the physiology that we want to achieve, and then by doing the breath, it'll pull the physiology there. So most people are using breath work to calm down, relax the system, and sort of leverage it for that. And it can do that wonderfully. It can also excite. It can sort of do all different things. So I had some patients turn me on to some Wim Hof style, and then sort of dove into it and read every book I can get my hands on, kind of thing. And and then I've been doing a practice for about 3 years now. The first 2 times were just like, something happened, and I was like, honey, you got to try it, kind of stuff. And then about a week into it, and these weren't the effects that I was anticipating. I thought it'd be some sort of respiratory, cardiovascular improvement, that my wind when I ran would be different or something like this, right? So not at all what arrived. By the end of a week, maybe 5-7 practices deep or something, my whole cognition changed in a way, and this is mostly my encouragement towards people. Is it's sort of hard to know where that's sort of what lock this will unlock for you. But for me personally, it was like memory and word recall and my cognition. I had this potential that was just sitting out on the table that was completely untapped. I didn't even know I had that sort of capacity in me, and so I just haven't wanted to set it down since. I've been doing it daily. When I wake up in the morning, go use the restroom so I don't have anything sort of bothering me, and then I'll get back into bed and do a breath work for a while. It's real quiet.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great sort of hijack for meditation if you're having trouble with meditation, but you need something a little more active to sort of concentrate on, focus on 5% of this to actively breathe, and then take your mind off the other 95.
Yeah, it's more activating. I've definitely found it for me to help with energy, especially in the morning if I'm feeling tired. If I did a little bit of Wim Hof, I got done some with you under classes and everything, that energy level just kind of goes up a notch.
Yeah, it's very activating, which is a great time to do it.
A couple of minutes.
I have dropped it in the middle of the night when I can't sleep and I got some anxiety. I mean, it would completely change my state of my entire, emotional, cognitive state.
Well, even when you're sleeping, when you're trying to sleep.
Yeah, if I was trying, I've done sort of last resort. I sort of pulled it out. I was like, well, what are the other tools I got? And sort of, it completely changed my state and my mental state, and so maybe it wasn't the most relaxing thing, but I was able to go back to bed because that was what was keeping me up,
Yeah.
And so it's been effective. It's just been massively effective in my life, and I'd encourage people there's enough free content out there to follow along with. And
Are you talking about Wim Hof breathing per se, or
yeah, I've done a lot of his stuff.
Not necessarily his technique.
Well, there's other sort of Wim Hof is a great place to get started. There's it depends what you're looking for to accomplish, right? There's a bunch of different styles. There's box breathing. Buteyko to sort of expand, work with asthma and different things. There's quite a range of experiences depending on what you want to get. I would sort of explore, and the one that sticks to the wall is probably the one you should do for a little while and see where that takes you.
Right.
But I've completely changed like nose breathing and can sort of, it's entirely regulation of my nervous system I just did not expect was available to me.
Yeah, breathwork definitely can change your physiology pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Within, I think some studies say within 90 seconds.
Absolutely.
It's pretty incredible how many pills can do that.
Yeah.
Very, very.
Yeah, you want to change a state, right? You got a
yeah.
situation that you're having a tough time breaking out of, right? You just sort of, right, you can change your physiology instantly and you can be in a different place in a couple minutes, right?
Breathwork is also very anti-inflammatory. It actually shuts off thousands of genes that are, driving inflammation. So we talk about, health and how a lot of chronic illnesses are driven by inflammation. Breathwork is another great place to start, along with nutrition, movement,
right,
sleep, and everything.
Yeah, and I think some of these sort of, at least it's not the most robust understanding of the physiology, as I have to admit, but my understanding of sort of what some of these breath retention techniques is, right, you've changed the pH of your blood chemistry enough that it's not asking for a breath, which is oftentimes the trigger, right? And so your blood isn't asking you to breathe, so you can retain your breath for such a long time. Your blood oxygen levels are dipping low into this sort of range that they're not comfortable with, which then triggers this sort of cascade of vascular production and oxygen carrying capacity and all these types of things where, just like when you're exercising, you're changing your metabolism that then burns even when you're not exercising, these sort of vascularization and these sort of oxygen capacity then works, outside of this and sort of builds up that whole system to be more robust because it thought it was in deficit.
You're talking about breath holding, Cory. How long should people hold their breath? And I'm imagining hopefully that people can listen to their own bodies as well to know what's best for them.
Yeah, it's the second you say that, I said please don't sort of make it a competition,
Correct,
with your previous self or with anyone else.
Right, because I wanted to mention that on this podcast because I know people will probably say, well, how long should I hold my breath? And even if like anything else,
Right. Yeah, people do with it different things with it, right? And maybe the ability on how long you can retain your breath is maybe an indicator of health. But I think to just sort of the guidance would be completely to listen to what is, because I can show up in totally different ways at different times. I wake up one morning and I can sort of I can shoot to the moon, and the other mornings I'm like, I don't even know why I can't even make it to whatever. But
so
that's not what's
your body. Listen to safe and lay down when you're doing.
That's my preferred sort of strategy. Sit down, right, where they say, don't pilot a vehicle or don't do anything. Don't be in any water that you're going to sort of drown in a couple inches of, or whatever that is. Be safe with yourself, please. Yeah. Be kind. Be safe with yourself, and just explore. Right, it's just an investigation, and making conclusions or defining things as such. You can sort of just say.
Let's mention 4-7-8 breathing as well, because I think Wim Hof or breath holding can be more of an advanced technique, and some people may want to start with that, but other people may want to start with a more calming breath.
Absolutely.
A lot of people are running around, whether they're running around physically or even mentally, and we all need a time during the day, either before, at the end of the day, or even in the middle of the day, to pause. And 4-7-8 breathing is a perfect way to do that.
When I think back to where we talk about changing your physiology, like changing your state, especially applicable in transitions during your day, right? Okay. If you're going to go from one behavior to a different soul separate, right? I'm going to go, I'm a professional and now I'm going to go home and be a dad, or whatever these sort of, role changes or some transitionary sort of state. I can take a few minutes and really bring myself there. And not sort of linger in the sort of residue of.
So using the breathwork practice as a little mini break, a little mini pause, a little transition. Got it.
Yeah. So I think, and sort of basic understanding is, these longer exhales are relaxing, sort of the brakes on the nervous system, sort of calming, very sort of, collecting, and these inhales, so the ratio of how much inhale to exhale, if you're activating or relaxing. So the longer exhales, the longer the relax, the more inhale in the practice, more activating.
So for 4-7-8 breathing, for instance, we would have 4 seconds of inhalation, 7 seconds of holding the breath, and then 8 seconds of exhalation.
Right, so you can see that double ratio.
Double ratio, 8 to 4.
Right, so it's very much highlighting the relaxation.
The calming aspect.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, anything else on breath work you'd like to say? Have you felt that your patients in acupuncture are, doing the breath work like during treatments, would you say, or do you encourage them to do that?
I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I don't do a lot of sort of meditation. I think it'd be great for somebody to take out opportunity to sit there. We end up sort of yammering on a bit and sort of, to sort of explore their life and what's going on. And it gets a little more casual, I think, when we're sort of upright sitting and having a conversation that somebody's trying to explain all this stuff going on. It's different and sort of, and so maybe I'm utilizing that space and time a little bit differently, right? Maybe I should keep my mouth shut and let them do some breathing and some meditation.
Different things work for different people, right?
Absolutely, right, yeah. So, it's an experiment with yourself, right? See what works, and listen and observe. And then, if you really respond to this relaxation technique of breathing, then that's the one for you,
With this amazing esoteric breathing technique known as breathing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you all are really
is available 24/7. Mm-hmm. We're talking right now, we're breathing.
Mm-hmm. Talk about accessibility
here, and whether you're driving a car, having a conversation with someone, eating, even, between you still gotta breathe when you're eating, so these are all areas that opportunities, I would say, moments of opportunities.
Right, we're already pretty good at it, right? We've been doing it for a long time, you sort of, just figure out how it is to, I guess if you're walking, you're good at walking, right? But have you run and crawled and Tai Chi and doing all these other things that you can do with your legs? It's pretty fun.
And we're not often aware that we're breathing, though, I would say. We've been breathing, many, who knows how many breaths, in our lifetimes here, but it's not something we pay attention to all the time. We're always paying attention to these other aspects of our lives.
Yeah, and I think by nature of the situation sort of requires you to breathe in a certain way, right? And if we're a bit stressed and a bit uptight, then we're sort of, we're activating these sort of costal muscles. We're getting our chest breathing going, and it seems natural because that's the breath for a stressed situation, right? We want to open up the pipeline and give maximum.
And I love what you said about the bidirectional nature of that breath to your mood. If you want to change your mood, you can actually change your breathing, and then it'll go in the reverse way, which is what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to be conscious of sort of where you breathe from and how you're breathing and what sort of, because it's a mirror of the situation that you're in, right? If I'm really chest breathing and upper rib cage breathing, I'm probably having a stressful moment,
One of the best ways to activate breathing is to just remind ourselves that we're alive, we have bodies, we're breathing, the breath is flowing in and out, and smiling.
Right.
Smiling is another piece that's going to potentially activate some of those relaxation, aspects to breathing.
Right.
So maybe we were talking about this earlier, but I thought this is great to, add on this podcast.
Oh, yeah. That was just a comment. I was on my way in here. I was, going to mention to you before we fired this up, but it was, I had my mask off and I was out in public, and it was a lot of distance. Everything was good, but I was just realizing I was smiling at everybody that was going by, sort of purposefully, and I just sort of had this, what a smile deficit that's been going on for the last couple years.
People were wearing masks or not wearing masks?
Well, I was. I could see people in cars. I was actually driving in the parking lot, and somebody sort of let me go, and I had this big smile, and Steve started smiling. That's sort of what set it off. And then somebody crossing the crosswalk, this young little girl that was sort of smiling with her.
Nice, smiling from the car. The energy is so amazing.
Yeah, you can be in a safe environment and smile. So, but just how much coverings have been worn, and how much sort of that transmission of that sort of love and that encouragement of it's really it's contagious, the smile and the mood and that sort of stuff, and so I felt we were living in a
good thing that smiles are contagious.
Absolutely. Living in a little deficit, I almost sort of single-handedly brought that up on the way in here.
Everyone knows how to smile. Everyone likes it. So just kind of reminding people that it's okay to smile.
Yeah.
It's a great way. Just like it's okay to relax. It's okay to let that backpack go once in a while.
Yeah, give yourself some license.
The smile is a great gateway into that.
Absolutely.
Nervous system balance.
Yeah, hard to complain with a smile.
So that's great. So Cory, I know you have an amazing morning routine. So that's one of our closing questions is, how's your morning routine? If you do have one, I suppose, but I believe you had shared before that you do have some.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure I got some.
Change once in a while.
Yeah, it always evolves. Like I said, I usually get up before everybody, but I get back into bed after I use the restroom, and then I get a little water, and then I'll do a breathing technique that I sort of do for maybe 15 minutes, and then I usually hijack the end of that because the state change is so cool and my mind is such in a different place. It really sort of is a great starting gate for a good meditation, and so I'll do that for a little bit, and then I like to make my bed. I've heard some people talk about that. Is that a nice, good win for your day? You can always come back to a made bed and you feel accomplished. So that's something I
already checked something off.
You already checked something off. And I think that's why I like front load so much stuff in my day. Is that conversation right there? It's like I get my exercises in early because then I'll know. You never regretted sort of finishing a workout, right? And so I always feel like my day's put together. I put some good food in my body. I've got my meditation, got my exercise underway, and then I can sort of shove off, and then whatever comes my way, I'm already good, challenges out there.
And as a healthcare practitioner and healer, as you know, it's the most important thing is to fill your own tank before you, are of service to others.
Absolutely.
You can do that.
Yeah. And I've had to learn that over the years,
Same, absolutely.
It's nice to show up and be ready for it. I have a little tank to give, I think that's a fine line for providers to walk. I've been talking to somebody recently about it. It's just, I think by the nature of something draws you in a profession like this, you're good at giving, and can you receive and can you sort of contain a bit, and it's a challenge, and for everyone, right? And,
right.
But you gotta, got more to give if you take care of yourself.
Absolutely. Well, aside from the CIH podcast, what book or podcast are you enjoying the most right now?
Usually my strategy lately has been to sort of dive into a topic and I'll go like 4 books deep into one sort of, one topic. So I was like, a little while back, it was all the habit books. It was Atomic Habits, some James Clear, and some, The Power of Habit, and then, and I got Essentialism. Greg McCowan was a really good one lately. I don't know, I do a lot of sort of, some self-help stuff and some Noah Harari stuff and some Nassim Taleb stuff. I don't know, I'm all over the map with it. And
got a library there.
Yeah, building it a bit, I guess. And that's and the podcast. I don't know. I'm so into the content that's available to people these days. It's infinite.
Amazing.
And it's such a great medium to have an engaging conversation with somebody that you can dive in a little bit and really like explore some content without any breaks or sponsorships and all these types of things. Not that there's anything wrong with that. People got to make $1, but you know what I mean. It's you get to explore what people are really into, and so go. The onus is then on ourselves to be the filter. The content is not the sort of it's not the problem, right? We've got enough content to fill up a world, but right, it's sort of it's really in Chinese medicine, your small intestine's really sort of working overtime these days to sort of filter what comes into the body, what gets absorbed in and what doesn't, right? And I think you have to really be your own filter and do that yourself, right? Who's going to
certainly in this day and age,
absolutely, and just to sort of be mindful. I'm a bit of a minimalist in certain types, and I sort of starve myself of certain types of content. I just
intentionally.
I don't like real theatrical sort of information, that has an agenda. So I just, I like to get real. I like to read my content because it just detracts from that a bit, the theatrics of it a bit. So
right.
There's no shortage of it. You just got to be sort of conscious of what you're feeding. And referrals to content are just as good as referrals to practitioners, And so make sure that, where they say you are the 5 people that you sort of hang out with the most.
Absolutely.
I think at this day and age, especially with the content, I could listen to Dr. Wong's podcast and be hanging out with him a bunch of times a week, and then maybe, I become a little bit of what you got, So
Same with you, Cory.
Absolutely.
One more thing. So what do you do every day to cultivate joy? We know that joy and purpose is they're really key aspects of health and wellness. So just kind of curious what yours on your docket for cultivating joy.
Oh, fun. Well, back to gratitude, kick it off with a good sort of thanks to be alive, right? It's great to sort of put your feet on the ground. So you should be sort of, it's a good one to kick off with. I sort of designed my life in a way that I can optimize the places that I find joy in, right? And actually be there and present to enjoy them. Walking my kids to the bus this morning is the most fun thing I've ever done,
Nice.
Today, right? So, I like being a dad, and I like sort of taking care of kids. So there's a lot of joy in that. I like being in a relationship and a loving relationship with my wife. It's lots of joy.
That's so great.
Lots of love.
That's so great.
You got to build it though.
Absolutely.
It doesn't just arrive sometimes. You got to.
And love is the foundation for wellness. Seriously.
100%.
This is something that we definitely like to cultivate here with our clinic, but it starts with great people like yourself, Cory. So thank you so much for coming on today. And
my pleasure.
Your spirit, presence, very much appreciated and loved by all of us. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to leave us a review. It helps our podcast reach more listeners, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Absolutely. Amazing. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Cory.